Dadperfectrevenge. You're a hateful man, my daughter-in-law said during Thanksgiving dinner. I set down my glass, looked her straight in the eye, and said, "How does it feel to know you're homeless starting today?" The whole room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop in that dining room I'd built with my own hands 15 years ago. I'm Gerald Fisher, 58 years old, and I spent 32 years as a construction engineer before retiring. What happened that Thanksgiving changed everything. But the story really starts 5 years earlier when I made what I thought was the right decision. Back in 2019, my son Victor's first wife died in a car accident. He was devastated, left with grief and medical bills that were crushing him. So, when he met Beverly, this young woman who seemed to bring him back to life, I wanted to help them start fresh. I signed over the deed to my house in Scottsdale, the house I designed and helped build myself, keeping only lifetime residence rights. It was all legal, all documented. Beverly was 24 then, full of energy and big plans. She ran some kind of online boutique selling clothes and accessories. Victor was working at Rodriguez Auto Repair, making decent money. They seemed happy, and I figured we could all live together just fine. The house was big enough, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, nice kitchen. I'd renovated myself just a few years before. I'd put everything I knew about structural engineering into that house when I designed it back in 2009. Load-bearing walls exactly where they needed to be, electrical runs planned for maximum efficiency, plumbing layout that could handle a full house without pressure drops. Every beam, every joint, every connection was calculated and purposeful. It wasn't just a house to me. It was a testament to 32 years of learning how to build things that last. For the first year, things were okay. Not great, but okay. Beverly would make little comments here and there about my old-fashioned ways or suggest I might want to modernize my thinking. Nothing too harsh. Victor would just change the subject when she got going. But by year 2, the comments got sharper. She started rearranging the house without asking. My workshop tools got moved to the garage. The family photos I had up, including pictures of my late wife Sarah, kept accidentally getting put away in boxes. When I'd ask about them, Beverly would say she was updating the decor for a more modern feel. The worst part was watching Victor. My son, who used to stand up for what was right, just went quiet whenever Beverly started in on me. He'd find reasons to leave the room, or suddenly have work to do outside. It was like watching him disappear piece by piece. Year 3 was when I found my wedding album in the trash. Not just thrown away carelessly, deliberately placed there under coffee grounds and kitchen scraps. These were pictures of Sarah and me from 1987, our whole wedding day. Pictures I'd treasured for 25 years before she passed. When I confronted Beverly about it, she just shrugged and said she was decluttering and didn't realize they were important. That's when I started paying closer attention to what was really happening in my own house. See, being an engineer teaches you to observe, to notice when things don't add up. When you're calculating load capacities or stress points, you learn that small problems become big failures if you ignore them. And what I noticed was that Beverly had been systematically erasing me from this house for years. She'd redesigned the living room with all white and gray furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine, not a home where people actually lived. The kitchen table where Victor used to do homework as a kid, gone, replaced with some glass thing that looked ready to shatter if you breathed wrong. My old recliner, the one I'd sit in after long days on construction sites, somehow found its way to the garage sale without me knowing about it. But more than the furniture, it was the way she talked to me. "Gerald, maybe you should eat less at your age. Gerald, you don't need to take up so much space in the living room. Gerald, that shirt makes you look older than you are." Always with this tone like she was doing me a favor by pointing out my flaws. And Victor just let it happen. I'm not a man who loses his temper easily. 32 years in construction, you learn to keep cool under pressure. When you're managing crews of 20 guys working on million-dollar projects, emotional outbursts don't solve problems. Careful planning does. But I started documenting things. I installed a small security camera in my bedroom, my space that she couldn't touch. I started recording conversations on my phone when she'd corner me in the kitchen with her comments. Nothing illegal about it. Arizona's a one-party consent state. The financial stuff came to light in year 4. I'd been paying my share of groceries and utilities like, we agreed, but I noticed the bills weren't getting paid on time. Electric company sent a shut-off notice. I asked Victor about it, and he looked embarrassed, said Beverly was handling the finances, but maybe there was some confusion. Turns out Beverly's online business wasn't doing as well as she claimed. She'd been spending the utility money on inventory that wasn't selling, but instead of admitting the problem, she started blaming me for costing too much to support. This from the woman living rent-free in a house I gave them. I also discovered she'd been making unauthorized changes to the house. New cabinets in the kitchen, no permits. Knocked out part of a wall between the kitchen and dining room, definitely no permits. As an engineer, I knew these changes needed city approval and building permits. That wall she removed, it wasn't load-bearing, thankfully, but it still required permits because it affected the electrical and plumbing runs I'd carefully planned when I designed the house. She'd also installed recessed lighting, without pulling electrical permits. Whoever did the work, and it wasn't a licensed electrician, had run new circuits without proper junction boxes. It was a fire hazard waiting to happen. Every time I looked at those lights, I could see the code violations. As someone who'd spent decades making sure buildings were safe and up to code, it made my teeth ache. That's when I started building my case. I pulled the original deed transfer papers from 2019. There it was in Section 7, Paragraph 3. Lifetime residence rights, revocable only in cases of gross ingratitude or documented abuse by the residing party. My lawyer had explained it to me back then, but I never thought I'd need it. I also researched Arizona building codes. Those unpermitted changes Beverly made, they were violations, major ones. I documented everything with photos, measurements, code references. The engineer in me couldn't help being thorough. I knew exactly which sections of the International Residential Code she'd violated, exactly what permits should have been pulled, exactly what inspections should have been done. More importantly, I knew that when you sell a house with unpermitted work, you either have to get retroactive permits and inspections, or you have to disclose the violations to potential buyers. Either way, it was going to cost money, money that would come out of the sale price. By November 2024, I had a file folder full of evidence. Recordings of Beverly calling me names when she thought I couldn't hear. Photos of her unauthorized renovations with detailed notes about code violations. Financial records showing unpaid bills despite my contributions. And most importantly, a growing pattern of what any reasonable person would call gross ingratitude. I also started reaching out to my old contacts. Lenny Rodriguez, another engineer who'd retired a few years before me, was working part-time for the city now doing building inspections. Over coffee one afternoon, I casually mentioned some electrical work I'd seen that looked questionable. Didn't give him the address or say it was my house, just described the violations I'd observed. "That's definitely not up to code," Lenny said, shaking his head. "Someone could get hurt. Anonymous tips come in all the time. People see dangerous work and report it. City takes those seriously." I filed that information away for later use. Thanksgiving was when it all came together. Beverly insisted on hosting her friend Sharon Anderson and this young couple, Howard Miller and Carol Thompson. She spent days preparing, cooking dishes I'd never seen her make before, trying to impress her guests. The whole time, she kept making comments about how I'd better behave myself and not embarrass the family with old stories. The day arrived and I cooked the turkey. I've been making Thanksgiving turkey since Victor was little, and I wasn't about to stop now. Beverly complained the whole time about me taking over her kitchen, but she couldn't argue with results. That bird came out perfect, golden brown, 165 degrees internal temperature, exactly like I'd been making them for 30 years. We sat down to eat at 4 p.m. sharp. The dining room looked nice, I had to admit. Beverly had set the table with the good china, china that had belonged to Sarah's grandmother, though Beverly probably didn't know or care about that. Candles were lit, fall decorations arranged just so. If you didn't know the tension simmering underneath, it looked like a perfect family gathering. Sharon was nice enough, asking polite questions about my engineering career. She seemed genuinely interested when I mentioned working on the expansion of Phoenix Sky Harbor back in the 90s. Howard and Carol were young, maybe early 30s, seemed genuine. Howard worked in IT, Carol was a nurse. Good people, the kind you don't mind having at your table. I started telling them about this bridge project I'd worked on back in the 90s, how we had to account for thermal expansion in the desert heat. The concrete would literally grow and shrink inches depending on the temperature, so you had to build in expansion joints at exactly the right intervals. Howard was actually interested, asking good questions about how you calculate those tolerances. That's when Beverly interrupted. Gerald, nobody wants to hear old work stories. We're trying to have a modern conversation here. The table went quiet. Sharon looked uncomfortable. Howard said, "Actually, I thought it was interesting." But Beverly just rolled her eyes. "Trust me," she said. "You don't want to encourage him." We've heard them all. Victor, sitting right there at the head of the table, said nothing. Just stared at his plate like it might disappear if he looked hard enough. My own son, the one who used to beg me for stories about building projects when he was little, letting his wife dismiss my entire career like it was boring small talk. I kept my cool, finished my meal, started clearing dishes. But Beverly wasn't done. She'd had a few glasses of wine, and it was loosening her tongue in ways that were about to change everything. "You know what your problem is, Gerald," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You can't accept that your time is over. You cling to this house, to your old stories, to relevance you don't have anymore." Sharon tried to change the subject, asking about dessert, but Beverly was just getting started. The wine had loosened something in her that had been building for years. "Look at this table. Look at this house. Everything here is ours now. We rebuilt this place, made it beautiful, modern. But you just sit here like some old ghost who doesn't know he's dead." Howard and Carol exchanged glances. These weren't family friends. They were Sharon's acquaintances who'd probably never met any of us before tonight. They were watching a family implode over Thanksgiving dinner, and you could see they wanted to be anywhere else. Beverly kept going. "Do you know what it's like, having to tiptoe around someone else's feelings in your own home? Having to pretend that everything you say and do doesn't matter because the old man might get upset?" That's when she turned to Sharon, like she was seeking validation from her audience. "I mean, honestly, Sharon, how long are we supposed to pretend that this arrangement is working, that it's normal for a grown man to be living with his son and daughter-in-law, making everyone uncomfortable?" "Beverly, maybe we should," Sharon started, but Beverly cut her off. "No, I'm tired of maybe we should. I'm tired of walking on eggshells. I'm tired of feeling like a guest in my own house because he's always here, always watching, always judging how we live our lives." Victor finally spoke up. "Bev, that's enough." But it wasn't a command. It was a weak request from a man who'd been avoiding this conversation for 5 years. "Is it enough?" Beverly whirled on him. "Is it enough, Victor? Because I've been patient. I've been understanding. I've tried to make this work, but he just keeps existing here, taking up our space, making us feel like children in the house we're supposed to be building our life in." She was gesturing with her wine glass now, and some of it sloshed onto Sarah's grandmother's tablecloth. The irony wasn't lost on me. She was destroying family heirlooms while complaining about my presence in the family. "This was supposed to be our fresh start," she continued. "After everything Victor went through, losing his first wife, all that grief and pain, we were supposed to be able to build something new here. But instead, we're stuck in some weird 3-generational living situation that nobody wants." Howard cleared his throat. "Maybe we should head out, give you folks some privacy to—" "No," Beverly said sharply. "Stay. Maybe it's good to have witnesses. Maybe Gerald needs to hear from outside people that this situation isn't normal." She looked at Howard and Carol expectantly, like they were going to back her up, but they just sat there, uncomfortable, trapped in someone else's family drama. "Gerald," Beverly said, turning back to me, "when was the last time someone actually needed you? Really needed you? When was the last time you contributed something meaningful to anyone's life?" I set down my fork, looked at her across the table. The dining room suddenly felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. Everything I'd been documenting, everything I'd been building toward, was crystallizing in this moment. "I contributed this house," I said quietly. 5 years ago," she shot back. "What have you done since then? Besides take up space and make everyone uncomfortable with your presence?" Victor was staring at his hands now. Not at me, not at her, just at his hands like they held the answers to questions he was too afraid to ask. "Do you know what Ethan said when we first met?" Beverly asked, and for a second I was confused because who was Ethan? Then I realized she meant Victor. She was so worked up she'd confused him with someone else. "He said his father was a hero, someone who built things, who mattered. But you know what I see sitting here?" She leaned forward, wine making her bold and cruel. "I see a man who's afraid to live in the real world, a man who gave away his house but kept all the control, a man who can't accept that his son has moved on, that his son has a new life that doesn't revolve around making the old man feel important. The room was completely silent now. Even the candles seemed to have stopped flickering. You want to know what I really think, Gerald? I think you're jealous. Jealous that Victor found someone who actually loves him instead of just needing him. Jealous that we're building something modern and beautiful while you're stuck in the past, with your old photos and your old stories and your old ideas about how families should work. She took another sip of wine, gathering steam. And the worst part? You're not even honest about it. You pretend to be this generous father who gave us this house out of love, but really you gave it to us with strings attached. You kept the power, Gerald. You kept control. And now you're sitting here acting like we're ungrateful when all we want is to live our lives without feeling like we need your permission. That's when she asked the question that changed everything. She looked me right in the eye, wine glass raised like she was making a toast, and said, "How does it feel to be someone everyone hates?" Complete silence. Howard and Carol looked like they wanted to crawl under the table. Sharon stared at her wine glass like it might offer her an escape route. Victor just sat there. My own son, the boy I'd raised by myself after Sarah died, who I'd supported through everything, who I'd given a house to when he needed it most. He sat there and said nothing. That silence was louder than any answer he could have given me. I set down my glass, looked Beverly right in the eye, and that's when I said it. "How does it feel to know you're homeless starting today?" She laughed. Actually laughed. "You're bluffing. Arizona Revised Statutes, Section 14-2451. Gift revocation for gross ingratitude. I can take this house back, and after tonight, I'm doing exactly that." The laughter stopped. Her face went pale. Howard and Carol made their excuses and left within 10 minutes. Sharon followed right behind them, muttering something about calling an Uber. Beverly spent the next hour screaming at me, calling me every name in the book. Victor tried to calm her down, tried to reason with me, but I was done reasoning. I went to my room, locked the door, and slept better than I had in years. Monday morning, I called Arthur Wilson, a real estate attorney I'd found online. His office was downtown, glass and steel, 13th floor, with views of Camelback Mountain. Wilson was maybe late 50s, sharp suit, firm handshake. "Mr. Fisher," he said, "gift revocation for." Gross ingratitude isn't used often, but based on what you've told me and the witnesses present, you have a strong case. I showed him my evidence, the recordings, the photos of unpermitted work, the financial records. Wilson nodded as he reviewed everything, particularly interested in the building code violations. "These unpermitted renovations actually strengthen your case," he said. "Shows a pattern of disrespect for your property and your expertise. How strong is our case? 75 to 25 in your favor, maybe better. We'll file the petition Wednesday." The next few months were a blur of legal proceedings. Beverly hired Diane Moore, some expensive lawyer her parents paid for. Moore argued that the gift was absolute, that you can't impose conditions retroactively, that I was acting out of spite. But I had something she didn't. I had the truth. Howard Miller and Carol Thompson came to testify about what they witnessed at Thanksgiving. Both of them looked uncomfortable, but told the truth under oath about Beverly's question and the hostile atmosphere at dinner. Sharon Anderson tried to minimize things, but even she had to admit Beverly's question was inappropriate and hurtful. The judge, Eleanor Martinez, reviewed all the evidence methodically. The recordings, the witness testimony, the timeline of disrespect going back years. On March 15, 2025, she made her ruling. "The court finds that a clear pattern of disrespect has been established," Judge Martinez said. "The question posed by Mrs. Beverly Manning on November 28, 2024, constitutes gross ingratitude under Arizona Revised Statutes." Beverly started crying right there in the courtroom. Victor held her hand, but he wouldn't look at me. The judge ordered them to vacate by July 1st. They had to pay me $8,900 for legitimate improvements they had made to the house, the permitted ones anyway. The unpermitted work they'd have to fix at their own expense before leaving, or disclose to potential buyers. I put the house on the market in May. Janet Phillips, this insurance consultant I knew, who also did real estate part-time, helped me list it. In this market, with Scottsdale prices, we listed it at $340,000. I had 3 offers within a week, accepted one for asking price from a young family with 2 kids who reminded me of Victor and his first wife. July 1st came and went. Beverly and Victor moved into some studio apartment across town. I heard through Lenny Rodriguez, my old engineering buddy, that Victor lost his job at the auto shop. Too many days off for court hearings. Beverly's online business collapsed after the IRS came after her for unpaid taxes. I may have pointed them in the right direction with an anonymous tip about unreported income. I closed on the house sale July 30th. After commissions and fees, I walked away with $95,000 profit, used part of it to buy a small ranch house in Tempe, 2 bedrooms, paid cash. The rest went into my retirement account. My new place is perfect for me. Single story, easy maintenance, nice covered patio out back. The kitchen's smaller than what I'm used to, but I'm only cooking for one now. Got my recliner back from wherever Beverly had hidden it. Set up my workshop in the 2nd bedroom. The best part is my neighbor, Patricia Davis. She's a retired teacher, maybe 62, brings me cookies sometimes and actually listens when I tell stories about my engineering projects. We sit on my back patio in the evenings, talk about books, watch the sunset. She treats me like I matter, like what I have to say is worth hearing. You know, Patricia said one evening, as we watched the desert sky turn purple, I had a similar situation with my ex-husband's family. They never quite accepted that I had opinions worth hearing. I told her about the bridge project from the 90s, how we had to account for thermal expansion in 120-degree heat. She asked intelligent questions, understood why the engineering mattered. It felt good to have someone appreciate the work I'd spent my life doing. Victor called me once in August, asked if we could meet for coffee, try to work things out. I told him I'd consider it when he was ready to admit what really happened, when he was ready to acknowledge that he chose her comfort over his father's dignity for 5 years straight. I haven't heard from him since. Do I miss him? Sure. He's my son. But I sleep well at night in my house, make my coffee in my kitchen, watch TV in my living room. Nobody tells me I eat too much or take up too much space. Nobody hides my memories or throws away my photos. Beverly learned the hard way that disrespect has consequences. Victor learned that staying silent when someone you love is being mistreated makes you just as guilty. And me? I learned that sometimes standing up for yourself costs everything, but losing everything is still better than losing yourself. That Thanksgiving question she asked, how does it feel to be someone everyone hates? I know the answer now. It feels a whole lot better than being someone who doesn't respect himself enough to fight back. Some folks might say I was too harsh. That family should forgive and forget. But respect isn't something you can demand. It's something you have to enforce. And after 58 years on this earth, I finally learned that lesson. Beverly thought she could make me disappear by making me small. Instead, she taught me how to stand tall again. Best education I ever got, even if it cost me $12,500 in legal fees and a relationship with my son. Some lessons are worth the price. Funny how much better life gets when you stop letting people treat you badly. Turns out self-respect isn't selfish. It's survival.